Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed how silence can scream louder than words? How walking away can shake someone more than begging them to stay? See, most people think regret comes from confrontation, from explanations, from long messages that never get answered. But real regret is born when someone realizes they lost access to you, your energy, your loyalty, your presence. And today, we're not talking about revenge. We're talking about mastery, the art of letting him regret everything without saying a word. Detaching with dignity is not about disappearing in anger or cutting someone off with bitterness boiling in your chest. It is about making a conscious, deliberate decision to step away without lowering yourself. Most people believe strength is loud, raised voices, final speeches, emotional confrontations, but true strength is quiet. It is the ability to walk away without demanding an apology, without forcing someone to understand your pain, without dragging the past into every conversation. When you detach with dignity, you are choosing self-respect over emotional chaos, and that choice alone begins to shift the power dynamic. Detachment requires discipline because your emotions will fight you at every step. Your mind will replay conversations, craft imaginary responses, and beg for one last explanation. You'll feel the urge to clarify your intentions, to correct misunderstandings, to make sure they know what they lost. But dignity means resisting that urge. It means accepting that not every story needs your voice, and not every ending needs your commentary. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop handing someone control over your emotional state. Walking away with dignity also means refusing to weaponize pain. You don't insult, manipulate, or guilt them into regret. You don't try to win by making them feel small. Because the moment you do that, you've already lost something more valuable, your composure. Dignity is about preserving who you are even when someone else failed to recognize your worth. It's about leaving without tearing pieces of yourself behind just to prove a point. Silence, when chosen consciously, becomes a form of self-protection. There is a certain discomfort that comes with a dignified exit, and that discomfort is essential. You won't get immediate relief. You won't feel victorious right away. Instead, you'll feel exposed because you're no longer expressing your emotions outwardly. But that discomfort is the space where growth happens. While they expect reaction, drama, or desperation, you offer none. And in that absence, questions start to form. Confusion sets in. They begin to wonder why you didn't fight harder, why you didn't beg, why you didn't chase. And that curiosity slowly transforms into regret. Detaching with dignity also changes how you see yourself. Every time you choose restraint over reaction, you rebuild trust with yourself. You start to realize that your value doesn't depend on being chosen, validated, or understood by someone else. You begin to feel grounded rather than desperate, calm rather than reactive. This inner shift is subtle but powerful. You stop seeking closure from external sources and start creating it internally. That is when detachment stops feeling like loss and starts feeling like freedom. Most importantly, dignity creates a clean ending. There are no embarrassing moments to look back on, no messages you wish you hadn't sent, no emotional outbursts you regret more than the situation itself. Time will pass, and when you reflect, you'll realize you left with your head held high, and that memory will matter to you more than anyone else. Because while regret may eventually visit them, dignity stays with you forever. Stopping free access to you is one of the hardest shifts to make because it requires you to understand your own value before someone else does. Access isn't just about physical presence. It's emotional availability, responsiveness, and the privilege of knowing what's happening in your life. When someone has constant access to you, they stop appreciating it. Familiarity breeds comfort, and comfort often breeds carelessness. By continuing to show up for someone who no longer shows up for you, you silently teach them that your presence is unlimited and unconditional, no matter how they treat you. Free access often disguises itself as kindness. You reply quickly because you're being mature. You listen because you care. You stay available because you don't want to seem cold or heartless. But there's a thin line between kindness and self-neglect. When someone can reach you anytime, vent to you, lean on you emotionally, and still not commit, respect, or choose you, the balance is broken. Removing access isn't punishment, it's correction. It's restoring the natural order where connection must be earned, not assumed. When you reduce access, the first reaction you'll notice is discomfort, yours and theirs. You'll feel guilty for not responding right away, for not explaining yourself, for not offering emotional labor like before. Meanwhile, they'll feel the absence more sharply than they ever felt your presence. Humans rarely notice what's always available, but they immediately notice what's gone. Silence creates contrast, distance creates awareness. And awareness is where regret begins to take shape. Stopping free access also forces a shift in power. When you're always reachable, you're always reactive. You respond to their moods, their needs, their timing. But when you step back, you regain control over your energy. You choose when to engage and when to protect your peace. This isn't about manipulation. It's about boundaries. Healthy boundaries don't announce themselves, they are felt. And once someone realizes they no longer have unrestricted entry into your world, they start questioning why. There's a quiet strength in becoming selective. You don't need to block, unfollow, or create drama. You simply stop overextending. You stop volunteering emotional support where it isn't reciprocated. You stop being the place they visit when they're lonely, bored, or unsure. Over time, they recognize that access to you is a privilege they didn't protect, and that realization hits harder than any argument ever could because it arrives too late. Most importantly, removing free access reconnects you with yourself. You reclaim time, mental space, and emotional clarity. You stop pouring into someone else's life and start reinvesting in your own. That shift changes your posture, your confidence, and your standards. You no longer wait to be chosen. You choose yourself first. And when someone finally understands what it meant to have access to you, you're no longer standing at the door. Upgrading in silence is about making progress without seeking permission, validation, or applause. Most people announce their healing because they want reassurance that they're doing the right thing. They post their growth, explain their changes, and narrate their journey in real time. But real transformation doesn't need witnesses. It happens in private moments, early mornings, late nights, uncomfortable decisions when no one is watching. When you upgrade quietly, you allow your growth to be authentic, not performative, and that authenticity carries a different kind of weight. Silence removes pressure. When you don't broadcast your plans, you're free to evolve at your own pace without opinions pulling you in different directions. No one gets to question your choices or doubt your progress. You're not proving anything, you're building something. This internal focus strengthens discipline and self-trust. You begin to rely on your own consistency instead of external motivation. And while others assume you're standing still, you're actually laying foundations they can't see yet. There is power in letting people underestimate you. When someone believes you're the same, they relax, they don't expect change, they don't prepare for distance. Then one day, they notice the shift, not through an announcement, but through absence. Your energy is different, your reactions are calmer, your standards are higher. That contrast creates a quiet shock. The version of you they once knew no longer exists, and they weren't informed of the transformation. Upgrading in silence also protects your peace. Growth attracts attention, and attention attracts opinions. Some supportive, many not. By staying quiet, you shield yourself from comparison, jealousy, and unnecessary interference. You don't give people a chance to doubt you before you're ready. You allow yourself to fail privately, adjust privately, and succeed privately. This makes your progress more sustainable because it's rooted in personal commitment rather than public expectation. When they finally notice your upgrade, it doesn't come with an explanation. You don't tell them what changed or how hard it was. You don't highlight the sacrifices you made. They see the results without knowing the process, and that mystery amplifies the impact. People respect outcomes more than intentions. And when the outcome speaks for itself, regret deepens because they realize they had access to you before the upgrade, before the strength, before the clarity. Most importantly, upgrading in silence shifts your identity. You stop defining yourself by what happened to you and start defining yourself by who you chose to become. You're no longer motivated by proving someone wrong or making them miss you. You're motivated by alignment, living in a way that honors your future self. And when someone looks back and realizes they lost you before you became your best version, the silence you kept becomes the loudest statement of all. Never trying to be understood is one of the most difficult lessons to accept because humans are wired to explain themselves. We want our intentions to be clear, our pain to be validated, our decisions to make sense to the people who matter to us. When something ends, the instinct is to sit someone down and walk them through every emotion, every breaking point, every reason why it didn't work. But the truth is, the people who truly wanted to understand you already did, and the ones who didn't never needed more information. Trying to be understood keeps you emotionally tied to the past. Every explanation reopens a door that should be closed. Every clarification becomes another invitation for debate, denial, or dismissal. You start defending your feelings instead of honoring them. And in that process, you give someone the power to judge your truth. Letting go of the need to be understood is not about being mysterious or cold. It's about recognizing that your experiences don't require approval to be valid. When you stop explaining yourself, you allow silence to do the work. Silence forces others to sit with their assumptions, their doubts, and their unanswered questions. The mind hates unfinished stories, so it fills the gaps on its own. And often those imagined conclusions are heavier than any explanation you could have given. What you don't say lingers longer than what you do because it leaves space for reflection and sometimes regret. There is also freedom in accepting that misunderstanding is not failure. Not everyone is meant to see your heart clearly, especially if doing so would require them to take responsibility for their actions. Some people prefer a version of the story that protects their ego. By stepping back, you refuse to participate in narratives that minimize your experience. You don't correct the record. You don't chase fairness. You choose peace over being right. Never trying to be understood strengthens your emotional independence. You stop seeking closure from conversations and start creating it through acceptance. You realize that closure isn't something someone gives you. It's something you decide. This shift changes how you move forward. You become less reactive, less defensive, and more grounded. Your energy is no longer scattered across explanations that go nowhere. Over time, this restraint reshapes how others perceive you. There's a quiet authority in someone who doesn't over-explain. It signals confidence, self-assurance, and inner stability. When someone looks back and realizes you left without pleading your case or justifying your exit. The absence of explanation becomes its own message, and that message lingers because what was never fully understood is never fully forgotten. Living well without being loud is about choosing substance over spectacle. In a world obsessed with announcements, proof, and constant updates, restraint becomes a form of power. Many people feel the urge to showcase their happiness, success, or healing to make sure it's seen, especially by the person who once overlooked them. But when your life becomes a performance, it's no longer fully yours. Living well means prioritizing real peace over visible validation, and that kind of fulfillment doesn't need to be broadcast to be real. A quiet life well lived is built on consistency, not comparison. You focus on routines that ground you, relationships that nourish you, and goals that stretch you. You invest in your health, your mindset, and your future without checking who's watching. There's no rush to prove you're okay or thriving. You let time reveal the truth. And over time, the stability you build becomes obvious, not through posts or words, but through how you carry yourself and how you respond to the world. Living well without noise also protects you from the trap of external approval. When you stop performing, you stop measuring your worth through reactions and recognition. You no longer need applause to feel accomplished. This internal validation creates a calm confidence that can't be shaken easily. People sense it in your posture, your tone, your presence. It's not flashy, but it's undeniable. And that quiet confidence often leaves a stronger impression than any loud declaration ever could. There's also a deeper discipline required to live well quietly. It means resisting the urge to share your wins the moment they happen. It means celebrating milestones privately and letting joy exist without an audience. This discipline keeps your intentions pure. You're not improving your life to send a message. You're improving it because you deserve it. That distinction matters because energy rooted in self-respect lasts longer than energy driven by proving a point. When someone eventually notices how well you're living, it comes unexpectedly. They hear about you through others. They observe from a distance. And what they see doesn't come with explanations or captions. They see balance, progress, and peace, things they may have once disrupted or underestimated. That realization lands quietly but heavily because it confirms what they failed to protect when they had the chance. Living well, not loud, ultimately shifts your focus from reaction to intention. You're no longer moving in response to the past. You're moving toward a future that feels aligned. Your life becomes fuller, richer, and more intentional. And when someone reflects on the noise they created versus the calm you built, the contrast speaks for itself, without you ever having to say a word. Becoming unreachable emotionally does not mean becoming cold, heartless, or disconnected from your feelings. It means you no longer allow someone access to your inner world when they have proven they cannot handle it with care. Emotional reachability is a privilege, not a right. When you continue to offer vulnerability to someone who once mishandled it, you reopen wounds that were meant to heal. Choosing emotional distance is not denial. It is protection. At first, this shift feels unnatural. You may still feel deeply, but you stop expressing those feelings to the same person. You stop reacting in real time. You pause before responding, and sometimes you don't respond at all. This pause creates space between emotion and action. In that space, clarity grows. You begin to see patterns more clearly, recognize triggers faster, and choose restraint over reaction. Emotional unreachability is not about suppressing feelings. It's about choosing where they are allowed to land. When someone realizes they can no longer provoke an emotional response from you, something changes. The arguments stop working. The mixed signals lose their impact. The push and pull dynamics collapse. There is nothing more unsettling to someone than realizing they no longer have emotional influence over you. Not because you're angry, but because you're calm. Calmness signals resolution, and resolution closes doors that manipulation once kept open. Becoming emotionally unreachable also restores your sense of control. You are no longer at the mercy of someone else's behavior or words. Your mood doesn't rise and fall based on their attention or absence. You stop waiting for messages, signs, or validation. This independence stabilizes you. You begin to move with intention rather than anticipation. Emotional peace replaces emotional tension, and that peace becomes addictive. There is a quiet maturity in choosing not to engage emotionally where it no longer serves you. You don't announce your detachment. You don't explain the shift. You simply stop offering reactions that cost you peace. Over time, this consistency rewires how you relate, not just to them, but to everyone. You become more selective, more grounded, more aware of your emotional boundaries. Eventually, emotional unreachability becomes freedom. You feel deeply, but you are no longer controlled by those feelings. You have access to yourself again. And when someone looks back and realizes they lost the version of you that was open, available, and emotionally invested, the realization hits quietly but permanently. By the time they understand what your emotional presence was worth, you are no longer reachable. So understand this clearly. Letting him regret everything was never about bitterness, punishment, or proving a point. It was about evolution. It was about choosing growth over attachment, self-respect over validation, and peace over emotional exhaustion. You didn't walk away to make a statement. You walked away because staying would have cost you yourself. Regret is not something you chase or demand. It arrives naturally when someone finally sees the value of what they mishandled. It shows up in quiet moments, in unanswered questions, in memories that no longer have access to you. And by the time that realization settles in, you are no longer standing in the same place waiting to be chosen. You mastered the art not by being loud, dramatic, or reactive, but by becoming whole, grounded, and unavailable to anything that no longer aligned with your worth. And that is the kind of ending that doesn't need applause, explanation, or closure, because the lesson has already been learned and you have already moved on.